Howdy folks, it's Adriel, the hunting gear guy. Today I wanted to do a comparison between the Browning AB3 and the Browning X-Bolt. These are two of their bolt-action rifles that are available right now that you might be wondering about just in terms of differences. So before we get too far, let's just safety check these. Chamber's empty, magazine's empty on the X-Bolt. Oh, that bolt feels great too. And on the AB3, where chamber's empty, our magazine's empty, bolt doesn't feel quite as good and it's a little bit chunkier looking, but when we get closer to these two firearms and take a look at them. Now just starting at the rear of these two rifles, they both have this fantastic Inflex recoil butt pad on them. So they're both quite squishy, really nice butt pads on them. And you can see that they both have very similar stock shapes. They both have a palm swill on the palm area there, just where for a right-handed shooter. So very similar stocks from the back of these rifles. As we proceed to the middle of these rifles, pretty similar in some ways. The bolt both has this flattened oval look to them. They both have a 60-degree unlock, so that's very similar on both of them as well. The bolt design looks a little bit different. I'll just back these two up. There's that stiff bolt I was talking about. You can see that the rear of the bolt on the AB3 has this cover that's a little bit chunkier looking than the more streamlined X-Bolt. The magazines on both rifles are at the front of the magazine. On the X-Bolt, the mag release is incorporated in the magazine. There's that rotary magazine. On the AB3, the mag release stays in the gun and the magazine is separate. There's that double feed box mag. Just from a top-down view here on the X-Bolt, our safety's at the rear, basically the same place as the AB3. The safety on the AB3 is at the rear of the bolt and operates in a similar manner, just with kind of crappier looking components than the X-Bolt. Our bolt has a cocking indicator on it. The rear of the bolt is a cocking indicator. And the bolt release, when the safety is on, is actually on the bolt right up top here. So you press that down to unlock the bolt even while it's on safe. To remove the bolt while the safety is engaged, there's a little gas pedal down here that you press and then unlock the bolt. To release the bolt, there's a bolt release button here. So we pull back on the bolt, push the button in, and the bolt comes out. To remove the bolt, there's a button on this side here. So we're going to pull the bolt back, push the button, and release the bolt. The bolt on the AB3 is quite large on the shank. It's quite heavy as well. The bolt on the X-Bolt has machine flattened surfaces on it, and it's quite a bit lighter than the X-Bolt. The magazine on the AB3 is made of a steel and polymer mix. It's a double stack magazine that feeds in from either side, and it'll hold 5 rounds of standard ammunition, AK 30-06 and 270 and that kind of thing. The X-Bolt magazine is a rotary magazine that will hold 4 rounds of standard cartridges like 30-06 and 270. It's quite a bit more compact than the AB3 magazine. Once disassembled, the AB3 has no bedding in here. It's just an all polymer stock. The X-Bolt is factory bedded at the front and rear of the action. The trigger unit on the AB3 is plastic and very simple and, in my opinion, very good. The X-Bolt uses a metal bottom instead of plastic. And there's the action on the AB3. And the X-Bolt uses a metal higher quality trigger assembly than the AB3. The AB3 uses a simpler countersunk bevel, crown, whatever. The X-Bolt uses a nice bevel on the crown Now, in terms of operations, the AB3 is pretty good for a budget bolt action rifle. The short bolt lift, just like on the X-Bolt, is excellent. The bolt feel is not nearly as good as the X-Bolt. Keep in mind, this is a budget priced rifle. It's going to have some considerations for that, right? So the bolt doesn't feel quite as good. It's quite sticky, and I think that's because it's got quite a large body on it. It's a full-bodied bolt, like you saw before there, and it's just a little bit catchy. Now, the bolt release, when the safety's on, works great. It's not quite as easily accessible as it is on the X-Bolt, but it still works just fine. And the bolt release to remove the bolt works fine as well. Doesn't look quite as good as the one on the X-Bolt, but it works just fine as well. Now, the X-Bolt's very similar to the AB3. I think you just see a lot more difference in the fit and function of it. The bolt is a lot slicker. You cannot bind this thing up nearly as easily as you can on the AB3. It just glides in the track there. Now, I mean, that's costly. It takes more money and more time to machine all those surfaces to get it to slide that well. But boy, it feels so much better. It just runs really great. Here, let me just show you. It's hard to get across on camera just how sticky this bolt is on the AB3 in comparison with the X-Bolt, which practically, like if you use the same force, it's just coming in and out so fast. So feels a lot better on the X-Bolt. The safety, a lot more accessible here on top of the bolt, just to unlock that guy. Now, I mean, downside, yeah, you could hit that, but with a scope on here, that's not going to be very accessible to get hit by trees or whatever, right? The bolt release is just a little bit nicer, but about the same. The bolt on this guy is quite a bit nicer. It's a lot more skinny than the other one. And lastly, the texture on the stock is a lot more grippy because it does have that DuraTouch on it. It's a lot more of a grippy, premium feeling stock on this thing. In terms of using these rifles to hunt, I've used examples of both of these. The AB3, the magazine is okay. It's a little bit tight in there, especially in cold weather. And I found that the magazine doesn't look nearly as good, but it still functions just fine. Now, compared to the X-Bolt's magazine, which is fantastic, you know, it's a pure polymer magazine that's rotary, but it's so lightweight and it's so strong looking and just strong. It's a fantastic little magazine and doesn't protrude from the bottom of the gun, so you can carry it from the center of mass there. There's nothing protruding into your hands. It's just a nice smooth bottom of the rifle, and it looks better too. In terms of scope mounts, there's actually something I really like about the AB3, and you can see it here. They sell an AB3 specific, and they, as in Browning, sells a specific ring and base mount for this rifle, and they're pretty inexpensive. They're right around 50, 60 bucks, and you can get an integrated base ring mount set that's going to be really strong and quite lightweight with fewer things that could fail on it than your traditional base and ring setup. Now, the X-Bolt, on the other hand, uses these 4 bolt hole bases to kind of hold on its bases, so a little bit different of a style on the scope mount for those. In terms of triggers, I was really impressed with this Browning AB3. It's got a plastic trigger, but it's so nice. Again, this rifle is empty, so I'm dry firing an empty rifle here, but I can't feel any creep on it. It just feels fantastic, and it's pretty lightweight as well. The trigger on the X-Bolt is excellent as well, and it's also very nice and short. You can't feel any creep to it. It's nice and light, and it's just like a glass rod breaking. There's no take up whatsoever on this thing, and you just press it and it goes off. Fantastic trigger on both of these rifles. So which of these 2 rifles should you choose? I guess that depends on your budget. I mean, one of these is quite a bit more expensive than the other. The AB3 is quite a bit chunkier looking between the bolt and the magazine protruding and the cheaper stock on it. You can definitely tell that they've saved a little bit of money on this thing. but the rifle itself is really shootable. I found the accuracy on this thing to be great. The trigger is fantastic. That definitely helps. And the integrated base ring mounts that you can buy for them are, in my opinion, excellent. On the other hand, if you have a little bit more money to throw at a hunting rifle, the X-Bolt is just a flat-out better rifle. The magazine is so much better, and I think that counts a lot in a hunting rifle, because you are frequently taking your magazine out and popping it in. The stock feels a lot better and is a lot more grippy. And lastly, but most importantly, and at least in my opinion, the bolt is just excellent. It's so much easier to work in and out than the AB3, and oh, it just feels so good. So definitely, if you've got the money, I would look at the Browning X-Bolt rather than the AB3. But if you're on a budget, the AB3 is not a bad rifle. The trigger's pretty good. Again, it's a pretty good value for the money. So again, that was a real quick overview of the Browning X-Bolt versus the Browning AB3. Thanks for watching.